Have you ever tried to really nail down a single, consistent definition of what conservatism is? It's a lot harder than it sounds. Well, today we're going to dig into a really provocative answer from Corey Robin's book, The Reactionary Mind. He argues there's one powerful idea that has driven the right for more than 200 years. So, what is it? Let's get into it.
All right, so let's just start with that big question. What is conservatism, really? We hear the word thrown around all the time, but what's the actual unchanging core of it?
Usually when you ask that question, you get a list of answers that looks something like this. People will say, oh, conservatism is about limited government, or it's about slow, careful reform, or maybe it's a commitment to virtue, or a deep belief in free markets. And these are the textbook definitions, right? They seem to make sense.
But then, you start looking at history, and the picture gets a lot messier. A conservative like George W. Bush launched a massive government project to build a nation in Iraq. Sarah Palin led this populist uprising that was anything but traditional. Suddenly, those neat definitions don't seem to fit the actions, and that is the puzzle the book tries to solve.
And this is where Corey Robin's central argument comes in. He says that to solve this puzzle, you have to look at it from a completely different angle. Forget thinking about conservatism as a list of ideas. Instead, we need to see it as a very specific kind of political action, a counter-revolution.
And here's that big idea in one sentence. According to Robin, conservatism isn't about what it's for, it's about what it's against. At its heart, it's a reaction. It's the movement that pops up to oppose people trying to get free from traditional hierarchies. And not just in government, but in the family, in the workplace, everywhere. Now, what's so important here is that Robin says this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's a feeling. It's a deep, gut-level emotional experience. It's about what it actually feels like to have power, to feel that power slipping away, and then to fight like hell to get it back.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what's the evidence for this? Well, Robin built his case by looking at these moments in history, where everything was being shaken up, starting way back with the French Revolution.
This quote from Edmund Burke, often called the father of modern conservatism, is just fascinating. He's not really worried about the government oppressing a hairdresser. No, he's worried about the hairdresser and other regular folks oppressing the state by getting the power to rule. For Burke, that idea was a total violation of the natural order.
And you see this same dynamic play out in America. Take the famous defender of slavery, John C. Calhoun. For him, the real danger, the revolution, wasn't some violent slave uprising. No, it was something much quieter. It was the moment Congress just agreed to receive petitions from abolitionists. The simple act of giving a voice to the people at the bottom, that was the real threat. It was about their agency.
And that fear of subordinate groups getting a voice, it points to a really crucial piece of Robin's argument. He says this reactionary impulse isn't just about who controls the government. For conservatives, the most important battles are often fought somewhere else entirely, in the private sphere.
These are what Robin calls private regimes of power. Think about it. The family, the workplace, the plantation. These are the places where traditional hierarchies, husband over wife, boss over worker, master over slave, are lived out every single day. And Robin argues that defending these private power structures is the real enduring project of conservatism. This quote just nails the connection. The great feminist leader Elizabeth Cady Stanton saw it crystal clear. She said the political fights over women's right to vote were never just about voting. At their core, they were a direct threat to the power that men held over women inside the home.
Now, if you're thinking that defending the old order means conservatives are just stuck in the past, Robin argues that's a huge mistake. Actually, he says they are often incredibly innovative and dynamic. This is one of the biggest paradoxes in the whole book. The reactionary isn't some quiet traditionalist who just wants to keep things the same. No, they're an active counter-revolutionary, and they're smart. They often learn from their enemies, borrowing their best tactics and their most powerful language to defend the old system.
Republican strategist Lee Atwater explained this playbook with, shocking honesty. He's describing how the language of the famous Southern strategy had to evolve. The goal of maintaining a racial hierarchy didn't change, but the words did. They became more abstract, more coded, because the old overt language was no longer politically acceptable.
And this dynamic is still very much alive today. Robin points to how the progressive language of diversity and inclusion has been picked up by some conservatives on college campuses. They use it to argue against what they call a hostile liberal orthodoxy. It's a classic case of taking the other side's language and turning it to your own purpose.
Here's another really surprising example of this in action.
Back in the 1970s, during the sexual revolution, you'd expect the Christian right to just condemn all the new talk about female pleasure. But some leaders did something much smarter. They started talking openly about how important it was inside marriage. It was a brilliant tactical move. They adapted to the culture and used the language of liberation to reinforce a traditional institution.
So, let's pull all these threads together. What does this all add up to? Well, Robin's argument is trying to give us a single, unifying thread that connects hundreds of years of conservative politics and thinking.
And when you lay it all out on a timeline like this, you can really see the pattern he's identifying. Whether it's Burke reacting to the common people, Calhoun reacting to abolitionists, or Barry Goldwater reacting to the civil rights movement, in this view, the political energy always comes from a reaction against a group from below demanding more freedom and power.
So the ultimate takeaway is this. According to Robin's thesis, conservatism isn't really defined by a loyalty to any fixed ideas, like small government or free markets. Instead, it's a political practice. It's the ongoing defense of an existing social hierarchy against movements from below that are trying to tear that hierarchy down.
And that leaves us with a final, really fascinating question for our own time. If conservatism is fundamentally a politics of reaction, what happens when it's not clear what there is left to react against? What happens to all that political energy when the revolutionary movements from below are harder to see? It's a question that really changes how you look at the entire political landscape today.